The laugh came at the worst possible moment, musical and cruel. Skipping across the treaty hall of the Starliner Imperial Dawn, while kings, admirals, merchants, and diplomats waited beneath a ceiling of living glass for the signing that would end 3 generations of war. And when Princess Lasara Valen pointed at the old man in the faded blue service coat and asked whether the museum had lost one of its exhibits, the room did not gasp. It froze because the man she mocked looked harmless. Human, gray at the temples, leaning on a cane. His chest lined with old ribbons and dull metals. His sleeves repaired by hand, his boots shined with stubborn care. And yet something in the air changed at once. Because there are insults that bruise a person, and there are insults that strike a memory larger than any throne. And the difference is usually learned too late. Some uniforms are cloth, and some are warning labels stitched by history. Lasara had been raised among velvet gravity decks, jeweled tutors. In a court that mistook comfort for civilization, she knew succession law, diplomatic posture, and the precise smile required to dismiss lesser houses without sounding openly vulgar. But Earth, to her, was a useful world of traders and soldiers, never elegant. And Commander Elias Ward fit the image perfectly, old, quiet. Almost invisible beside the polished nobles of the corps, she saw a relic invited for ceremony. Not the officer who had held the breach at Sagan 9 while civilian transports escaped. Not the captain who had stayed on Caldron after his own evacuation window. Closed because wounded allies still waited in the ash. His uniform was old, yes. The Republic starburst on the collar had been sewn back twice. One button did not match the others. One sleeve carried a scorch mark no tailor had removed. But every imperfection was a relic of survival. And when he answered her with a tired little smile and said that the exhibit still remembered how to bleed, several humans in the room lowered their eyes because they knew that tone. It was the sound of a grave opening under polished marble. History does not always shout. Sometimes it simply stands up straighter. Lysara should have stopped. But arrogance is loudest when it thinks it is safe. So she stepped closer, touched one of his faded ribbons with a gloved finger, and asked whether the colors had dulled from age or surrender, and then the first chair moved. A sharp scrape on crystal deck, then another, until the sound rolled through the hall like thunder. Veterans were rising from banquet tables, security stations, diplomatic alcoves, private galleries, some in uniform, some in merchant coats, some carrying scars that no formal wear could hide. Admiral Sato of the Jovian Ring rose with her chrome arm catching the glass light. Then Elder Tumas of the Kepri clans, then Captain Amber, on 3 prosthetic legs, then dozens more, human and non-human alike. And they did not look at Commander Ward first, they looked at the princess. With the cold stillness reserved for someone who had stepped onto sacred ground in muddy boots, Admiral Sato spoke before anyone else could. She told Lasara that the coat before her had stood on worlds where bloodlines failed and only duty remained. Elder Tumas said his brood line still existed because Ward's company had refused extraction until every hatchling transport cleared orbit. Captain Ombre said the scorch on that sleeve came from dragging allies through reactor fire while armor fused to skin. Then a pilot from Vega recalled convoys shielded by human volunteers flying missions they knew they would not survive. And as voice followed voice, the princess's smile died, because mockery can survive ignorance, but not testimony arranged like an army when the old rise together. Even empires remember who paid their debts. Commander Ward never asked for the defense. That was what shattered the room. He only shifted his cane and looked almost embarrassed, as if the honor belonged to the dead, and he was standing in borrowed light. Then he lifted his head and spoke, not loudly, but with the steady sorrow of a man carrying too many names. He said the princess owed him nothing, but she owed the fallen accuracy. That every ribbon she had marked a place where someone's child had failed to come home. Every repair in the coat had been sewn because discarding it felt too much like abandoning the ones who had worn the same blue into fire. Then he unpinned the oldest medal from his chest, a plain iron star rubbed nearly smooth, and set it on the treaty table between royal seals and floating legal scripts. Humanity, he said, had never crossed the stars to be admired. It crossed them to endure, to build, to bury, and to stand again. If this peace was to mean anything, it had to begin by remembering who stood in old uniforms, while great houses still debated whose dignity mattered. And even the living glass above seemed to dim. Respect is cheap in peace. True respect kneels before the cost of peace. Lysara looked around then, and realized rank could command silence, but not honor. And honor was standing everywhere, except beside her. She stepped down from the royal dais, removed her gloves, and bowed, not the shallow nod of etiquette, but the memorial bow used for battlefield graves. Then she apologized, first to Commander Ward, then to the veterans, then, with her voice shaking, to every name she had never learned, and because humans are dangerous not only in war, but in mercy. Ward accepted with a tired nod that held neither triumph nor cruelty. Only exhaustion. The veteran sat again, slowly. Like a storm deciding not to break the world after all, the treaty was signed an hour later. But no one remembered the prepared speeches or the legal holograms. They remembered the blue uniform, the careless laugh, and the moment a hall full of survivors rose as one to defend what it meant, and across the systems the story spread. Through barracks, academies, cargo ports, and royal courts, until it hardened into a lesson no empire could polish away. That humanity's strength was never in crowns, never in spectacle. It was in the terrible loyalty it gave to sacrifice, in the way it guarded its dead by guarding their symbols, and in the simple truth that if you mock one weathered human soldier, you may discover an entire species already on its feet behind him,